So welcome, time to have another question session over here, an answer session really. The reason I'm doing this is because there's a lot of questions I'm getting on the channel and a lot of them are repetitive to each other, and if you're just, thinking about building a PC or doing some kind of creative, upgrade on your system or something like that, then having these questions answered like for everybody is a very helpful thing for you. But before we jump to the first question, big thanks to Whokeys for sponsoring this video. So if you're looking for Windows 10 Pro key, which also works on Windows 11 because you can upgrade for free, by the way, or Microsoft Office, then I'm going to show you very quickly how you can do that very easily. So we've got the Whokeys website over here. I'm going to add this to my basket over here. $22 as you can see, and let's add this to the basket as well. Let's go to the shopping cart. So let's go proceed to checkout. When you're checking out, make sure you add TN20 code, and as you can see, we're gonna get 30% off. So as you can see, I have purchased them just now. I used PayPal to do this. Now this is the message on my phone that the money is gone actually out from my account. So the reason how you can do this and how you can get actually the keys is, as you can see on my account, if you go to there and you go user center, there we go, and you go my purchased orders, you can see where your licenses are. So by the way, this Windows 10 Pro key, it's completed. You can see view keys, get the key. As you can see, obviously I'm gonna blur it out for you. Literally get the key. You're gonna go to activation settings. I have already the license for this, but what we can do is change product key. I'm gonna paste it in there. We're gonna go next, activate. Windows has been activated, voila, and there we go, the key worked. If you want to upgrade now to Windows 11, there we go, but I'm not gonna in this system because I don't want to. Another thing is, remember the Microsoft Office license. As you can see, we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna get the key, we're gonna copy it. Obviously for you, this is blurred out. But if you don't know how to activate the Microsoft Office 19 license, then you can just read this article over there. Basically, if you sign in and then paste it in there, confirm, voila, this is now licensed, and I can actually download the Office setup and get it actually installed on my system. So boom, I got my Microsoft 19. So if you're looking to get that very cheaply, the Windows license and the Microsoft Office 19, then I'm going to leave the links in the description below. And please make sure that you use the TN20 code to get 30% off. So the first question then, this is by Wayan, something. Leave before my English is bad. I use Google Translate. I want to know if the ProRes footage is Mac only or on Windows, how good is it? Good enough to work? I plan to shoot 4K video with Arri Alexa camera. Yes, ProRes absolutely works on Windows as well. It's no problem if you use, DaVinci Resolve or Premiere Pro video editing software. No problem, it will work as well. Now, it is natively working on Apple and it works much better on Apple, but it can work on Windows as well. Next question is from Daryl St. Clair. They've got a PC part picker, which we're going to look at in a moment. Working towards a creative build with room for future upgrades. Mostly video editing, mostly 1080p in DaVinci Resolve, with many layers, color grading, effects, and so on. I want a smooth timeline and decent render times. And here you can see his PC part picker list. It's $1,795. He's chosen the Intel i7-12700K, Arctic freezer, cooler, and so on. So I'm going to go step by step in this build and show like which ones I would actually change. So first of all, very good processor. It's going to work absolutely awesome. It's a beast of a processor, super smooth experience in there. The cooler, very good as well. $51. You might want to look around if you different shops. You should be getting this around $45 or something like that, $44. So you can check it out. This is Amazon.com. Just have a look at different colors. You might get it cheaper if you go with a different color and save extra few dollars. You don't need this thermal paste actually with the cooler because it actually is included with the cooler. By the way, when you're buying the cooler, make sure that it does have the LGA 1700 support, because some of the older versions that are still in stock, in the shops, they might not have the actual, mounting kit for this, but you should be able to get this from Arctic as well. We've got a Gigabyte Aero Z690 DDR4 motherboard, very good motherboard, quite good price here as well, $270. It's absolutely full of features, but you might not want to go with this motherboard if you don't need all those features. Like, you can save a little bit because it's a little bit expensive, but it does have like the best DDR4 features on Intel 12th gen. For RAM, we have 32 gigabytes of Team Group Expert here for $117. It's quite good. CL18 3600 megahertz. You might want to upgrade this to 64 gigabytes. Now, at first, 32 gigabytes is going to be fine for you, but upgrade path, you can have 2 of these later on. But if you can, 64 gigabytes is going to be a bit better buy for you. But 1080p, I think you're going to be fine with 32 gigabytes as well. Just don't have a lot of other things open at the same time, doing other, background tasks. Sabrent Rocket 1 terabyte M.2. I think this is the PCIe Gen 3 drive. It's a very good drive as well. Pretty good buy here. GPU, very good as well. Case, no problem. Power supply, Corsair 750 watt power supply, no problem, very good as well. Plenty of upgrade path there. Now, this is where we're gonna get a little bit of an issue here. The Arctic P14 PST fans, so they're very good fans, very affordable. But the thing is, you've got a 5-pack over here, and I think what you want to do is have 2 of these in front of the case, 2 on the top of them, and 1 on the back of the Corsair case there. But the thing is, the back exhaust of the case in the back there only supports 120 millimeters, just so you are aware. Now, the case does come with one of them, so you might want to leave that one there, and then get the rest 4 fans around there. They're not too expensive, so you're going to have like 1 spare for your future builds or something like that. Or just switch out the Arctic P14 fans to P12 fans, and then you can get 3 140 millimeters in the front, and then I think 3 on the top, maybe 2 on the top, and then 1 in the back anyway. So you might be able to even get away with 1, 2, 3, maybe a 3-pack of fans. So you get 3 in the front because there's 1 included in the front and back, 1 in the front and then 1 in the back. So you kind of get 3 in and then 2 out. That will be the best way, because you want positive pressure inside the case, which means a bit cleaner build, basically, less dust inside. MX Master 3, very nice mouse in there as well. Other than that, very good build. By the way, if you want to submit any questions for your builds or for questions, anything you have, leave them in the comment section below down there, and I'm going to use like those questions for the future builds. But also feel free to leave your PC part pickers there. If you don't see your comment, I'm going to have to reprove it separately, just because YouTube bans any links in the comment section below. So don't worry about that. I'll get to it eventually, and then you'll see your comment there. But also let me know what you're using your system for, because then I can really optimize this and give you the best bang for buck for your system. So this is a long one over here, and there's a few different things that we're going to be answering. So Simon is asking here a few different questions. One's like a $2,000 budget for the system for next 4 to 5 years. Photo editing, does a little bit of gaming, and so on. First question is, do I need the 12600K versus 12400, 12500, or 12600? Probably not be overclocking. Now here's the thing, the 12600K has a massive leap over the 12400, 500 and 600 without the K. The 12600 actually doesn't have the efficiency cost. 12600 versus 12600K, there's a huge difference actually between those two. The 12600 is probably the best 6-core CPU in the world, but the 12600K is a 10-core CPU, and those 4 efficiency cores actually make quite a big difference. Now, they also reduce your power consumption, because when you're not doing anything, you're going to use those smaller cores, and you're using less power. But also when you're doing powerful things, the small cores can actually work then as well, which is going to give you quite a bit of performance. So there is a difference over there. I would go for 12600K. Question 2, I'm not going to do overclocking. Do I need the Z690 board, or shall I go with B660 or H670? I like to have better audio quality, which is why I went with the Gaming X, but this isn't a priority, as well as the heat spreaders for the M.2 drives. I'll have 2 M.2 drives and 3 older drives to store my photos. Will Z690 translate to future-proofing in any way? Or seems like the good B60 or H6 boards are the same or close to the Z690 Gaming X board pricing. That is just seems like the logical choice. So if you look at his actual PC part picker here, he has chosen the Gigabyte Z690 Gaming X DDR4 motherboard. And if you're wondering, like, should you go with B660 or H670, then basically the Z690 motherboard isn't just good for overclocking. I know that's like one of the main features that, you know, is advertised for gamers, but it also has more bandwidth in the chipset for other things as well. So it's going to have more M.2 storage slots on there, and then less, like, you know, switches between. So if you look at the Z690 or the B660 boards for the same kind of motherboard, same layer type of thing, then you can see that the B60 is very limited to like the PCIe lanes or the lanes that come from the chipset. The Z690 has more, so the Z690 has more features in terms of like bandwidth and connectivity, more USB ports, M.2 slots, you know, maybe more SATA ports and so on. So having that Z690 board will help you if you use those features. In terms of future-proofness, no, whatever is going to be like coming out next, the next processor, like the 13th gen, it's going to be supported on a Z690 and B660, so that kind of works the same. So no real like future-proofness just by going Z690 motherboard. But have a look at different motherboards. So if you find something very cheap or on a deal that's just B660 and you don't need a lot of the features, then go for that one. But what I've usually find is that the Z690 motherboards, most of them have like 3 or 4 M.2s, where the B660 have 2 or 3, so like 1 or 2 less. Just if you use a lot of M.2s, that might come useful. I have seen the G-Skill Ripjaws DDR4 4000 CL18 for about $30 more than the 3200 CL16, but will this actually impact the performance? Measurable way? Is the motherboard dependent? So he's got the DDR4 3200 CL16 memory, and he's wondering if we go with, you know, 4000 megahertz, will that going to be better? For photo editing, what I'd recommend is, rather than going more faster DDR4, get more, because that's going to be a bigger bottleneck. I highly recommend you check out my DDR5 versus DDR4 comparison, because I also have a few different speeds of DDR4 there, so you can check the performance difference in Lightroom and Photoshop applications and see like how much the speed actually makes the difference of the application of the RAM. So go check out that video. I'm gonna leave it linked up there as well in the description below if you want to go check that out. Also, because it's quite fast, the DDR4, you might have issues if you want to upgrade to 4 sticks later on, like 4 sticks of, so let's say 64 gigabytes of 4000 megahertz. That might be a little bit difficult for you because the XMP might not work and so on. But if you have 3200 or 3600 megahertz, you shouldn't have any problem just slotting another 2 slots in your memory, you know, slots, and then having XMP on, and you have, you know, 64 gigabytes. Is the motherboard dependent? Not really. It's the chipset that's really dependent on the you know, RAM. But check out the QVL list, which is qualified vendors list for the RAM on the motherboard website as well, because some motherboards, especially with the new 12th gen, a lot of things are new. What they do is they don't have support for all of the RAM because it just works a little bit differently. So if you want to make sure that your RAM actually works with the motherboard, check out that the RAM mother is on, you know, the motherboard website. But just a little tip over there, 3200 megahertz or 3600 megahertz, really, in my experience, it's not that fast of a RAM to actually cause issues, even if it's not on the QVL list. Just, you know, it works no problem. And a tip over here is buy it from Amazon or like a shop that you can easily return. If it doesn't work, just send it back and get something else. That's why I'm using Amazon often, or like Newegg or some other shops that offer like very easy returns, no questions asked. Just like a tip for you over there. Is the CPU cooler sufficient to prevent thermal throttling? We have this Pure Rock 2 for the 12600K. Yes, absolutely fine. That's going to be no problem cooler for that one. But I highly recommend you check out also the Arctic Freezer 34 Esports Duo, because you might get it for the same price, but it's actually a little bit of a better cooler, or a little bit more powerful cooler. So now the question about M.2s, 1 terabyte and 512 gigabytes, should I get this one? Now the M.2s, he has chosen the Sabrent Rocket Q drives, like 2 terabyte and 1 terabyte drive. Now I don't really recommend using these drives, especially if you're using photo editing and large drives, because they have only they have a QLC flash on them, which is not very good for creators if you're using large files and so on, you're transferring big files. So I wouldn't go with these. go with the Sabre Rocket one, not the Q one, the one that has white on it. Just basically don't go for that one. You might pay like extra $10 more, but you're gonna have much faster speeds and sustained speeds will be there. These drives, what basically will happen is if you transfer a lot of files on there, they might have a high speed at first, and then after like 30 seconds or something like that, it's gonna drop down right down to like SATA speeds, and it's basically going to run SATA speeds most of the time. So I wouldn't really recommend going with them. I highly recommend you go check out my storage recommendation video for M.2 drives, like cache and project drives, and which M.2s to use. It's quite a long video, about half an hour, but basically I'm covering everything about storage for video editors really, but it does apply for photographers as well, like you are. So I highly recommend you check that out. As you can see, there's some B-roll on the screen for it, so check it out in the description below. Since you are not doing a lot of video editing, the Radeon RX 6600 XT will be fine. Now this will be like gaming video card and so on, so I guess, if you want better gaming performance, you might want to go with these cards. So I'm not going to touch that point just because you mentioned you want to do gaming as well. Sixth question, am I making the right decision going with Intel over AMD in terms of future proofing? Would you consider a good performance comparison in AMD? I think you are making a good decision just because the AM4 platform is dead at the moment, so you don't have any future upgrades. And the single core performance for these new 12th gen chips on Intel are super good. So you're gonna see the performance in Lightroom when you're editing photos and using the faders, colors and contrast, saturation and all that, and working around with the masks and painting with brushes on Photoshop and Lightroom. You're gonna see the performance difference in there, and Intel is gonna be much better at doing that just because of the single core performance. So I think it's best to go with Intel. For the question, is Be Quiet 802 because it sees good reviews and it's big and so on. It's very big. Like, I've got it over there. It's really massive, and it's a good case, very good case. It's absolutely massive. So yeah, whatever. Like, you want to go Lian Li 011 Air Mini. I'm not sure if the 011 Air Mini will fit your case, just because the Air Mini, I think that only supports M-ATX cases, but you have an ATX case, so just make sure that it fits if you want to go with that case. Another question here, I'm not going to say these usernames because I'll probably pronounce them wrong. Undecided between 12700 and 12600K. Use heavy software, image rendering like Blender, machine learning, artificial intelligence, and programming. Is it better to have overclocked 6 core or an overclocked 8 core? In terms of areas that would more benefit the overclock, therefore increase the frequencies, or a CPU not overclocked with 2P cores more, which thing will benefit me more in my case? Now, honestly, if you're a creator, you're actually working in Blender, for example, and machine learning, I wouldn't recommend you overclocking your CPU. Now, that's just like a general thing. If you're working on a project and you have an overclocked CPU, it's basically just like a ticking time bomb. You never know when the overclock's going to fail, or you need more voltage and you're going to get blue screens of death. So you can't really risk it, and I wouldn't risk it for doing that. That's why I would go with 12700K, because it also has better multi-core performance in Blender. So I would go with 12700K. Like, to me, that's a no-brainer. Here's a little question on the Apple M1 versus 12900K test that we did. Have you tested using both units over a long period of time? The Intel PC is a power guzzler. Performance may have an impact on the PC since temperature will eventually go up. In a 100-meter dash, the PC may win the race, but in a marathon, the Mac will take the cake. So basically, I have now used the Mac Mini, the Mac Studio there with the M1 Ultra, and that for third week going now. And honestly, I've had not a very good experience just because of the long run, like just the video editing experience in Adobe Premiere Pro. That's like my platform. You might be saying, why don't you use Final Cut and why don't you use DaVinci Resolve? Well, why don't you use something else? It's just because what I'm using for my software, it's already, everything like workflow is set up for that. And I've been thinking about switching, but that's another story. This is for my workflow. I want to see if there's any hardware that will work better for my workflow at the moment, which works best for me in Premiere Pro. And honestly, I'm not very impressed with the M1 Ultra with a 64 core GPU on the M1 Ultra, chip on the Mac Studio. It's just very, very laggy, and I've been tempting to switch back on the Ryzen 9 3950X with RTX 3070 just because it did such a better job at the timeline performance when I'm editing, because all of my videos, as you can see, apart from this one, is multicam. So I've got 2 cameras or maybe 3 cameras, or if you're doing like a video with some kind of creator that we at the moment editing there with some of the Intel guys, Marcus Yam from Intel. It was me, Ben, and Marcus. They're all like just simple H.264, either 1080p or 4K timeline, no color grade on top, and it just struggles with playing the timeline back. Like 3 audios, and the timeline on the multicam is just so slow. So if you have any tips for me, let me know in the comment section below. But like this 2.5 weeks kind of experience, fully switched over to that, I'm not really impressed compared to like something I was using a 12900K with 1390. That was much better, like in terms of experience. But if you have any tips for me, let me know in the comment section below. A question on the last Q&A I have here: if I use 12600K with DDR4, Intel says that it supports 3200 megahertz. Is there a benefit of using 3600 megahertz RAM with it? I'm asking because I saw a lot of people doing it. Is it beneficial or money waste? I highly recommend you check out my DDR4 versus DDR5 video, because there you can actually see the benefit of 3200 versus 3600 megahertz RAM in different applications and how does that affect. The 3200 megahertz rated by Intel is the memory controller speed. So basically, if you want native like Gear 1, so 1-to-1, 3200 megahertz on the RAM and 3200 megahertz on the memory controller, that's like the ultimate performance. You can overclock like your RAM to something and then have like a little bit 1-to-2 ratio, so your memory supports like 2-to-1 ratio, like 1800 and then 3600 and so on, and that will not be any problem at all, like enabling XMP. Just have a look at my test performance difference with the 3600 megahertz. Depending on the price, have a look at the percentage. It's a few percent better on the 3600, depending on your application. Just have a look at the price of the RAM and then the performance difference. You can calculate if that percentage is worth it. So Giza is asking a question on the best video editing PC and workstation in the world that we did. The Asus Z690 Pro Art with the RTX 3090 TUF. A question on fans: are all the 6 radiators on the fans daisy chained together and then connected to one header on the motherboard, or are they 3 in the front chained and the 3 on the rear chained and connected to 2 separate headers on the motherboard? Are 2 fans on the top and back daisy chained together, or are they all separately connected to the motherboard? Thanks for any help. No problem. So basically, the radiator fans on the front should be daisy chained together, all 6 of them daisy chained together and then kind of controlled by one header, just because if you have either one of the layers, front or back, working faster or slower than the other one, basically it can damage the fans because you're pushing more air through the other one that might be working slower, so you're pushing it faster, or you're pulling the front ones a little bit faster but they're actually working slower, so there can be an issue with that. So I'd recommend all of those 6 fans working together, so as fast as they're pushing, they're pulling it through. That will work the better. Now the fans on the top and on the back of the case, you can daisy chain them together and work, kind of the same from one header on the motherboard. But what I would recommend is make sure that like your exhaust of the case, so like top and from the back, will be slower than intake of the case. That really prevents you from pulling dust in from any of the other gaps of the case. So whether it's on the back of the PCA slots, you might be pulling dust in if your exhaust is faster than the income, because from the front, remember, your intake comes from the mesh panel through the radiator and then pushes in. Obviously the 6 fan will help you, but they might not be as good as like the exhaust fans that can just push it out. Just play around with that a little bit, make them like go out or blow out a little bit slower than the intake fan. Make sure that the intake is a little bit faster. Question on the 12700 versus 12700K video here. Question to replace a computer on the 9-year-old computer. The 12700 is 369 and the 12700K is 375. So the 12700K is a good deal. Yeah, it is. So the one issue I'm trying to clear up is what should I be spending extra on? I'm an amateur creator, editing and rendering a few videos per month. The longest is about 2 hours long. I use Movie Studio Platinum 17. Never game and no interest in overclocking. My new computer will last as long as my current i7 3770 with 16 gigs of RAM. Oh yeah, you're gonna have a massive upgrade. So having an i7 from i5 is a bit of a jump, but it looks like you might not be able to use all the features of the 12700K. Now, I'd rather get 12600K and then later on you can upgrade that if you want to, because the 12600K is absolutely a beast of an editing like just processor. Is really good. Like RAM 16, 32 or 64 gigabytes. I wouldn't go with 16 gigabytes. It's definitely going to be a bottleneck in your system. 32 gigabytes minimum, but now since you've saved a little bit on the i5, I'd probably go 64 gigabytes of RAM because that's going to be really a beneficial thing for you, especially when you want to do lots of things at the same time. NVMe SSD or SATA SSD, go with NVMe. There isn't that much of difference and it's going to be much easier to install, especially for programs and if you have, you know, 12700K system or 12600K system. Graphics card, is it necessary? Yes, it is necessary for video editing. Definitely need a graphics card. If you want something budget, sounds like a 3050, RTX 3050 is a good option for you. Is air cooler okay? Yeah, perfectly fine. Can you recommend any specs for buying a PC laptop for video editing? I think it means like a, you know, Windows laptop for video editing. Or is a Mac better? Not much looking at the cost unless it's outrageous. I want to be portable and be able to also do live streams and use the same system. So it depends what you're looking for and what's your budget. Like the Apple systems, probably the M1 Max will be a good one for you if you want to do MacBook Pro, but that's going to be like $3,500, which is mental. If you want something like on a Windows system or PC system, then I highly recommend you check out the Asus ProArt StudioBook Pro 16 with the dial, because they're very affordable and absolutely amazing prices what you can get for your system. So feel free to check that out. But if you're looking for laptops for creators, go check out Benji Kaiser's channel because he has much better idea how to do that. By the way, that question was about the $1,000 PC. If you haven't seen that video, feel free to go check that out because you can get an insane PC for video editing for $1,000. So this question is about the DIY portable SSD that you can get on like a Sabre enclosure. If you haven't seen that, feel free to check that out. It's like one of my favorite things. I've got two. I'm going to place another order today or in the next few days to get another one just because it works so well and I'm going to use it with different things. The question is, the Western Digital Blue NVMe's don't have DRAM cache. That seems to be the case with cheaper SSDs in general, though Intel 660p does have DRAM, but only 100 terabytes of written endurance rating. Has that ever been an issue? No, honestly, I've been using the SN550 drives on these enclosures for a long time, and that's not an issue if you do like recordings from the Blackmagic, you know, Pocket Cinema Camera 6K that I've been recording all the time. Everything goes there. And if I'm downloading footage, I've never seen like the drop in performance. Just because also bear in mind, you're going to be bottlenecked not because of the SSD inside the enclosure, but the actual 10 gigabit like a connection. So you're only going to get maybe like 700, 800 megabytes per second, somewhere around there, transfer speed. But the NVMe inside is much faster than that. So for this enclosure, I wouldn't worry about that. There's a question here by Suhel, how to create a cache drive. So if you haven't seen the storage workflow setup for DaVinci Resolve and Premiere Pro, feel free to check them out if you're a video editor. But cache drive basically is just add another drive inside your system. You don't set it up separately. Initialize the drive on your Windows, you know, like disk management, and then you just see another drive in your system, and then just use that drive as a cache drive. You don't like set it up separately. But if you see that video, later on I can show you like on that video how you can set up the cache drive and like how to configure the settings in your video editing software. So Bruce here says, I'm a video creator and looking for a new computer. I don't have any intention whatsoever to overclock my CPU. So is the water cooler necessary? Does the 12700 come with a stock air cooler? Does the K version have any benefits other than overclocking? So the 12700K is a little bit of a faster processor. It runs actually a little bit cooler according to my testing. Have a look at my 12700 versus 12700K video. You'll see it over there. But you don't need a water cooler for that. I'm just using this as an example. I have it like lying around, but you can completely go air cooling. That's not a problem at all. Highly recommend you check out the Arctic Freezer 34 Esports Duo, just because I've been using this and it just works so great. I've actually got 2 of them in there. Oh, there's one over here. Fantastic cooler. Highly recommend you check that out. So that's enough of questions for this time. Thanks guys for watching. If you have any other questions or if I can help you like boost your build, spend less money on your build and get more performance, then I would love to do that. Let me know in the comment section below if you have any questions, your build feedback. Leave a PC part picker down there so I can actually comment this and give me your build setup. Anything you want to add, just leave it in the comment section below, and hopefully this will be featured in the next video. Likes if you enjoyed it, subs if you'd like to see more, and see you soon.